The city shimmered under the twin suns, its silver towers reaching high into the sky like fingers stretching toward the stars. Everywhere, the citizens of Voria moved in precise, careful patterns. No one spoke unnecessarily, and every action seemed measured, almost ritualistic. Among them was Lyra, a young alien girl with luminous teal eyes and hair that shifted colors like a living aurora. She walked through the crowded streets, but her mind was elsewhere, lost in thoughts of freedom she had never known. From birth, she had been bound to her life, trained to obey, to serve, and to accept the rules of her society without question. Yet deep inside, a spark of curiosity and rebellion had begun to glow. Lyra's daily routine led her through the Grand Hall, a vast structure where citizens presented themselves for inspection by the overseers. The hall was cold, metallic, and silent, save for the soft hum of energy conduits running along the walls. Lyra's pulse quickened as she passed under the watchful gaze of the statuesque guards. Their presence reminded her of the invisible chains she lived with every day. She moved with practiced obedience, but her heart raced with the forbidden thrill of wondering what lay beyond the walls of her city. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her feet. A low rumble echoed through the streets, growing louder by the second. Citizens paused, glancing up at the sky in confusion. The twin suns reflected off the metallic towers, and in the distance, a glowing object streaked across the sky, tearing through the clouds. It crashed with a deafening roar into the outskirts of the city, sending a wave of dust and debris into the air. Panic spread like wildfire. Alarms blared, and guards shouted orders, urging everyone to stay inside. But Lyra could not move. Her feet felt rooted to the ground as her eyes followed the fiery trail. Something about the crash stirred something deep within her, an unfamiliar excitement she couldn't ignore. Minutes later, a convoy of armored vehicles arrived at the crash site. The overseers and guards quickly surrounded the area, forming a protective barrier around a strange, smoking object. Curiosity burned within Lyra. Without thinking, she slipped away from the crowded streets and crept toward the outskirts, keeping to the shadows. As she approached, the smoke cleared, revealing a sleek, metallic vessel unlike anything she had ever seen. Its surface shimmered in colors that didn't exist in the Vorian spectrum, and its edges were smooth, almost alive. At the center of the wreckage, a figure struggled to free themselves. The being was human. Lyra's breath caught. She had heard stories of humans, rare creatures from distant galaxies, almost mythical in her world. But she had never seen one. The human was smaller than the Vorians, with pale skin and dark hair matted with dirt and sweat. They moved with a strange combination of fear and determination, their eyes wide with confusion and pain. Something about their presence was magnetic, dangerous, and yet oddly familiar, as if the universe itself had chosen this moment for their meeting. Lyra watched as the guards approached, weapons raised, shouting in the harsh, guttural language of the Vorians. The human froze, their hands raised in a gesture of surrender, but their eyes never left Lyra's. For a brief, suspended moment, time seemed to slow. Lyra felt a strange connection, an unspoken understanding that this being was not like the others in her world. There was intelligence, curiosity, and a glimmer of courage in those eyes, a promise that their meeting was not by accident. The overseers stepped forward, their voices commanding silence. They inspected the human with clinical precision, touching instruments to their skin and scanning for signs of contamination or threat. Lyra stayed hidden behind a pile of rubble, her heart hammering in her chest. She knew that her curiosity was dangerous. Being caught near a foreign being, especially one from the outer galaxies, could result in severe punishment, or worse. But she could not tear her eyes away. Hours passed, and the human remained under guard, speaking little, observing everything. Lyra noticed subtle movements, the way they tilted their head when they saw something new, the way their fingers brushed over the metal walls of the cage with fascination rather than fear. She had never seen such unbroken curiosity, such quiet defiance. Her own world, so rigid and controlled, suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. She longed to reach out, to speak, to ask questions she had been forbidden to ask. As the twin suns began to set, casting long shadows over the city, the human finally spoke. Their voice was soft but firm, carrying words in a language Lyra had never heard. Yet somehow, she understood the emotion behind them, the plea, the warning, and the promise. Lyra shivered. She had never felt such a pull, such a need to act. Something inside her shifted, breaking a fragment of the chains she had lived under all her life. Just then, one of the overseers noticed her. Lyra froze, heart pounding. The guard's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing. For a moment, she feared she had been discovered. But then the human did something unexpected. They stepped forward in their cage, raising a hand in a silent, imploring gesture. Lyra's eyes met theirs again, and in that instant, a silent pact formed. She didn't know what it meant yet, or what dangers it would bring, but she knew one thing: her life, and the life of this human, had become intertwined in ways neither of them could predict. The shadows lengthened, and the city's lights flickered on, illuminating the towers like distant stars. Lyra slipped back into the darkness, her mind racing. The world she knew was changing, and she could feel it in every nerve. This human had arrived by chance, or fate, and nothing would ever be the same again. Behind the walls of Voria, in the cold metallic heart of the city, a spark of rebellion had been lit, and it would not be easily extinguished. The city of Voria never slept, but at night it felt colder, quieter, and heavier, as if the twin suns had drained all warmth from its towers. Lyra walked through the streets, her mind still reeling from what she had seen earlier. The human, the one who had crashed from the sky, was real, alive, and somehow, connected to her in a way she could not explain. Every step she took echoed in the empty corridors, a reminder of how small and trapped she truly was. But that spark of rebellion inside her had grown into a flame. She could not forget him, nor the silent plea in his eyes. Lyra returned to the outskirts, keeping to the shadows. The crash site was now under heavy guard, with soldiers patrolling in tight formations. The human remained in a containment unit, their movements restricted but eyes still alive with curiosity, scanning everything around them. Lyra watched from a distance, holding her breath. Something inside her demanded action, whispered that she should reach out, even if it meant risking everything. She had been taught to obey, to never question the overseers, but the pull toward the human was stronger than any rule she had ever known. Over the next days, Lyra observed him in secret. She saw how carefully he studied his surroundings, noting details others would miss: the color of the walls, the hum of the energy conduits, even the pattern of the guards' patrols. He seemed calm yet alert, almost as if he were playing a game he already knew how to win. Lyra's curiosity grew with each passing moment. She began leaving small tokens near the containment unit, simple objects she thought he might understand. At first, he ignored them, but soon, he began to respond. A small nod, a glance, a subtle smile. It was not much, but it was enough to keep Lyra coming back, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. One night, the moon rose high over Voria, bathing the city in silver light. Lyra had slipped away from her assigned duties, moving silently through the narrow alleys. She reached the containment unit, careful to stay out of the guard's sight. The human was there, waiting, as if he had known she would come. Their eyes met, and a strange warmth spread through her chest. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice soft but firm. Lyra startled. How did he know? I can't help it," she whispered, her own voice trembling. "I had to see you, to know you are real." The human studied her carefully. "You're brave, or foolish. Maybe both. But you shouldn't risk yourself." Lyra's pulse quickened. I have to know about your world. About why you came here. Why now?" The human paused, glancing around as if checking for anyone who might be listening. "I don't have much time," he said. "And you must be careful. They watch everything. Every move you make can get you in trouble, or worse." Lyra's stomach tightened. Every word he spoke was a risk, yet she leaned closer, drawn by a curiosity she could not control. She had never felt such a pull toward anyone, let alone a human. The thought of danger only made her heart race faster. Over the next several nights, their secret meetings continued. They did not speak much, but their glances, gestures, and small tokens communicated volumes. Lyra learned quickly, piecing together his strange language, trying to understand his knowledge of the galaxy beyond Voria. The human, in turn, observed her, the way she moved, the way her eyes reflected the twin suns, the careful restraint she kept in a world that demanded obedience. He began to trust her, sensing a strength hidden beneath her measured demeanor. But danger loomed. The overseers were not blind, and whispers began circulating through the city about a young citizen lingering near the outskirts after dark. Guards patrolled more frequently, and sensors recorded unusual movements near the crash site. Lyra knew she was being watched. Her heart ached with fear, yet it was tempered by a strange exhilaration. She felt alive in a way she never had before. One night, as she approached the containment unit, she saw the human pacing inside. He stopped suddenly, his gaze intense. "Lyra, I need to ask you something. If I give you a way out of this place, if I promise you freedom, would you take it?" Lyra froze. The question was forbidden. Escape was dangerous, almost unthinkable. But the idea of freedom, of breaking the chains that had bound her since birth, was irresistible. Her mind raced. What would her life be outside these walls? Could she survive in the galaxy beyond Voria? And most importantly, could she trust him? I don't know," she whispered. Her voice barely carried in the cold night air. "It is dangerous. They would kill me." He stepped closer to the bars, eyes locked with hers. "I will protect you. But you must choose. There is no turning back once we begin." Lyra's heart thundered. Every instinct screamed both warning and desire. She had been raised to obey, to submit, to accept a life predetermined by others. Yet now, standing on the edge of something unknown, something forbidden, she felt the first stirrings of true choice. For the first time, the future belonged to her, and the decision was hers alone. As she turned to leave, she glanced back at him one last time. The twin suns had dipped below the horizon, leaving the city bathed in the eerie glow of artificial lights. Shadows stretched long across the streets, and the hum of the city seemed louder, more oppressive. Lyra knew that tomorrow, everything could change. Either she would continue her life of obedience, or she would step into the unknown, bound only by the trust she placed in a human who had appeared as if by fate. That night, as she lay in her small, bare quarters, Lyra could not sleep. The human's eyes haunted her thoughts, burning with a mixture of intelligence, courage, and mystery. She felt a thrill of fear and excitement at what lay ahead. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance grew, pushing against the chains of her society. She had glimpsed a world beyond her own, a world full of possibilities, danger, and wonder. And she knew, with a certainty that both terrified and exhilarated her, that nothing in Voria would ever be the same again. The first step toward freedom had been imagined, and the path forward was shrouded in shadows. But Lyra was ready, or at least, as ready as any alien girl bound by a lifetime of rules could be, to step into the unknown. The city of Voria seemed quieter than usual, but the silence was deceptive. Lyra moved through the dimly lit streets, her heart pounding in rhythm with the hum of the distant energy towers. Tonight, everything would change. She had made a choice. The spark of rebellion she had felt since seeing the human had grown into a blaze she could no longer ignore. She could no longer live under the strict chains of her society, obeying rules that suffocated her very soul. And she had decided, she would help him escape, and perhaps, in turn, escape herself. 4 days, Lyra had observed the patrol patterns around the containment area, memorizing the timing of the guards, the placement of sensors, and the routes between towers. She had collected small tools in secret, simple devices that could bypass locks, override minor security systems, and create small distractions. Each step of the plan was dangerous. Failure could mean imprisonment, or death. Yet, as she approached the outskirts once again, shadows clinging to her like a second skin, she felt a thrill she had never known. The fear of being caught only heightened her focus, sharpening every sense. The human was waiting, as he had every night. His eyes met hers, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. No words were needed, the plan was simple, but its execution demanded perfection. Lyra moved to the control panel beside the containment unit. Her fingers flew over the smooth surface, bypassing security protocols she had learned in secret. The human watched intently, his expression calm but alert, scanning the perimeter as if he could sense every danger before it appeared. A soft click echoed in the darkness. The unit's locking mechanism disengaged. The human stepped out, his movements precise and careful, a shadow blending into the night. Lyra's pulse raced. They were not yet free. The real challenge was still ahead, navigating the streets without being seen, avoiding the patrolling guards, and reaching the outer boundary of the city where the alien surveillance was weaker. Every step could be their last if they were discovered. As they moved through the narrow alleys, the city seemed almost alive, watching them with silent, judging eyes. Lyra's mind raced, calculating distances, hiding places, and escape routes. The human followed her lead, trusting her instincts without question. She had never realized the weight of responsibility before, how one mistake could destroy both their lives. Yet, there was also a sense of exhilaration, a pulse of freedom that surged with every careful step. They reached a junction where two patrols crossed paths. Lyra pressed herself and the human into the shadows, holding her breath as the guards passed within a few meters. The human's hand brushed hers, and for a brief second, she felt a strange warmth, a reminder that they were not alone in this. But there was no time for sentiment. Every second counted. The city was alive with eyes, and the walls were full of ears. One wrong move, one careless sound, and the escape would end before it had begun. As they neared the outer boundary, an unexpected obstacle appeared. A new patrol, faster and more alert than the others, was moving directly toward them. Lyra's mind raced. There was no time to retreat. With a deep breath, she triggered a small device she had hidden in her sleeve. A flash of light erupted in a nearby alley, drawing the patrol's attention. Guards shouted and ran toward the disturbance, leaving a narrow path open. Without hesitation, Lyra and the human darted through the opening, hearts pounding, muscles burning with adrenaline. The final stretch was the most dangerous. Beyond the city's edge, the landscape was rough, uneven, and unfamiliar. The twin moons cast long shadows, making the terrain difficult to navigate. Lyra stumbled, barely catching herself on a jagged rock, but she did not stop. The human helped her regain balance, their hands briefly touching in a spark of urgency and connection. Every step was a test of endurance, every sound a potential alarm. Behind them, the city's lights flickered, a reminder of the life and the danger they had left behind. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared across the city. Lyra's heart sank. They had been detected. She could see the glow of searchlights moving across the horizon, scanning the streets and alleys for fugitives. The human grabbed her hand. "We have to move faster," he said, his voice urgent but steady. "They won't stop until they find us." They ran, leaping over jagged rocks and slipping through narrow crevices. The air was thick with tension, each breath a mixture of fear and determination. Lyra's mind raced, not just with the logistics of escape, but with the consequences of failure. If they were caught, punishment would be severe. And yet, each step forward was a rebellion against a life she had once accepted without question. She felt alive in a way she never had before, a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration that made her heart beat like a drum. As they neared the outer boundary, they encountered the last obstacle, a deep chasm, the only passage to freedom blocked by a sheer drop. Lyra froze, looking at the gap that separated them from safety. The human assessed it quickly. "We can jump," he said. "Together." Lyra hesitated. The fall could be fatal. But the thought of returning to the life she had left behind was worse. With a nod, she took his hand, and together they leapt into the darkness. Time seemed to stretch, the wind roaring in their ears as they fell. Then, with a heavy splash, they landed in the shallow waters below, gasping for air. Behind them, the city's lights flickered in the distance, a reminder of the world they had dared to defy. Breathless and soaked, Lyra looked at the human. He smiled, a brief but reassuring gesture that somehow made all the fear worthwhile. "We're not safe yet," he said. "But we've made it this far." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange mixture of triumph and fear. They had escaped the immediate danger, but the journey ahead would be even more perilous. Beyond the city lay the unknown, alien factions, hostile landscapes, and secrets of the galaxy that neither of them could predict. Yet, for the first time in her life, Lyra felt the power of choice, the thrill of freedom, and the dangerous excitement of stepping into a world beyond rules, walls, and control. And so, under the twin moons of Voria, two fugitives vanished into the shadows, bound together by fate, trust, and the first step toward a destiny neither had imagined. The city behind them would remember their defiance, and the galaxy ahead would test their courage in ways they could not yet see. Beyond the city's walls, the landscape of Voria's outskirts stretched wide and unfamiliar. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and shadows moved strangely under the twin moons. Lyra's heart raced, each step into the unknown filling her with both fear and exhilaration. The human walked beside her, calm but alert, scanning the horizon as if he could see danger before it arrived. She had come to rely on him, to trust him with a faith that terrified her as much as it comforted her. Yet, even in that trust, questions gnawed at her mind. Who was he really? Why had he come here? And what truths had he not yet told her? The human spoke first, breaking the tense silence. "There's more to this galaxy than Voria," he said, his voice low. "Your society, it's not unique. There are other worlds where beings like you are controlled, bound, even hunted. And humans? We've been watching, studying, sometimes intervening. But not openly. Not yet." Lyra's eyes widened. Why? Why would humans care about us? He looked at her, his expression serious. "Because freedom matters. Because no one should live under chains imposed by fear and control. I came here because your world is changing, and if you don't act, many will suffer. I need you to understand this before it's too late." The words struck her like a physical blow. Her entire life, the rules, the obedience, the quiet acceptance of control, suddenly felt meaningless. For the first time, she saw the true scale of the universe and realized how small and trapped she had been. The city, the overseers, even her own people, they were just one part of a much larger system of power, fear, and manipulation. Lyra swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. "And, what about us? What about you?" she asked. "Can I trust you? Or are you just, like them, using me for some plan I don't understand?" The human's gaze softened. "I am not your enemy," he said. "But neither am I your savior. I can guide you, show you possibilities, but the choices, your choices, are yours. You must decide what kind of life you want. Do you want to be bound? Or do you want to fight?" Lyra's mind spun. Fight. She had never been taught to fight, never allowed to question, never allowed to dream. Yet now, faced with the possibility of freedom, the spark inside her flared into a flame. She realized that she could no longer hide behind obedience. She had to act. As they moved further into the wilderness, the air grew colder, and strange noises echoed in the distance. Shadows shifted among the jagged rocks, and Lyra felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. "We're not alone," she whispered, gripping the human's arm. He nodded. "I know. There are factions in this sector, aliens who hunt and capture others, selling them or using them for experiments. They are aware of humans in this galaxy. And now, they know we are here." Panic surged, but Lyra forced herself to focus. The knowledge that danger was near did not weaken her resolve, it strengthened it. They had come too far to turn back. Every step forward was a rebellion, every breath a declaration that she would no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. Suddenly, a group of shadowy figures appeared on the ridge above them. Their silhouettes were twisted and unfamiliar, moving with predatory grace. Lyra froze. The human crouched beside her, his eyes narrowing. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We can't fight them head-on. We need a diversion." Lyra's mind raced. She had tools, small devices she had carried since escaping the city. With trembling hands, she activated one, sending a bright flare into the sky. The figures paused, momentarily distracted, scanning the light for its source. Using the opportunity, she and the human slipped through a narrow passage between jagged rocks, hearts hammering with fear and adrenaline. They ran for what felt like hours, the landscape growing stranger and more dangerous with every step. The shadows seemed to reach for them, and every noise, every snapping twig, every distant roar, set her nerves on edge. Yet, through the fear, a strange thrill coursed through her veins. She was alive. She was moving, choosing, deciding. And though danger loomed, she had never felt more herself. Finally, they paused in a hidden cave, exhausted but undetected. The human crouched beside her, catching his breath. "We can't stay long," he said. "They will regroup. And there's more you need to know." Lyra's curiosity burned hotter than fear. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated, then spoke. "There are truths your people have hidden from you. About your world, your history, even your own abilities. Some are dangerous. Some are powerful. And you may have the potential to change everything. But only if you understand who you are and who you choose to become." Lyra shivered. The words were heavy with meaning. For the first time, she realized that escaping the city was only the beginning. Beyond the walls, beyond the dangers, lay knowledge, power, and choices that could alter not only her life but the fate of entire worlds. As they rested in the cave, the twin moons of Voria casting pale light through the entrance, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would not allow fear to control her anymore. She would learn, fight, and choose her destiny. And she would trust the human, not blindly, but wisely, aware that the galaxy held both allies and enemies, often indistinguishable from one another. Outside, shadows moved. Somewhere in the distance, the first hints of danger were already closing in. Lyra knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new revelations, and new tests of courage. But tonight, for the first time in her life, she felt the thrill of true freedom, and the terrifying weight of knowing that the path forward was hers to walk, and hers alone. Dawn broke over the rugged landscape beyond Voria, casting pale light across jagged rocks and hidden valleys. Lyra woke with a sense of urgency, the memory of the night's revelations pressing on her mind. The humans sat nearby, quietly checking the small devices and maps they had carried from the city. His calm presence was a strange comfort, but Lyra could feel the weight of responsibility settling heavier with each passing hour. The galaxy was larger, darker, and more dangerous than she had ever imagined, and now her actions mattered. Not just for her own freedom, but for the fate of many others. The human spoke first, his voice steady. "We need to move. The factions I mentioned, they're closing in. And there's something you must see. Something your people have hidden from you for centuries." Lyra's curiosity flared, mingled with fear. "What is it?" she asked. "You'll understand soon," he said. "But you must be ready. This knowledge, it will change you." They traveled through narrow passes and shadowed valleys, the terrain growing harsher with each step. Lyra's mind raced. Her life in the city had seemed difficult before, but now she realized how small it had been. The city had been a cage, and she had never truly known the power of her own potential. With every step, she felt that potential stirring, a dormant strength awakened by necessity, fear, and the strange connection she shared with the human. At last, they arrived at a hidden plateau, a place untouched by the rigid control of Voria. Strange plants glowed faintly in the shadows, and crystalline structures rose from the ground like the fingers of a long-forgotten civilization. The human turned to her, eyes serious. "This is a place of power," he said. "Your ancestors built it long before the city existed. Few remember it. Fewer still know how to use it." Lyra stepped forward, her hand brushing the glowing structures. A strange sensation pulsed through her, like the hum of life itself flowing into her veins. She felt energy she had never known, a connection to the world around her and to the stars above. It was both frightening and exhilarating. Suddenly, the ground trembled. From the shadows, figures emerged, members of the factions hunting them. They had followed, tracking their movements, waiting for the perfect moment. Lyra froze, fear gripping her, but the human was already in motion, leading her toward cover. "We can't fight them head-on," he whispered. "You have to trust yourself." Lyra's mind raced. Instinctively, she reached out, touching one of the crystalline pillars. A wave of light erupted, surrounding her and the human in a protective cocoon. The attackers hesitated, shielding their eyes from the unexpected brilliance. Lyra realized, with awe, that she had awakened a power hidden within her, a gift long buried by her society's rules and control. "Keep moving," the human shouted, pulling her toward a narrow passage. The attackers regrouped, their expressions furious, but Lyra's confidence grew. With each step, she felt her power strengthen, flowing through her limbs, guiding her movements. She no longer felt small or bound, she felt unstoppable. As they fought their way through the plateau, Lyra used her abilities to create barriers of light, disorienting the enemies and clearing paths for their escape. The human moved beside her, providing strategy and support, his calm intelligence complementing her raw, newfound power. Together, they became a force neither Voria nor the galaxy had anticipated. Finally, they reached a hidden valley, safe for the moment. Lyra collapsed onto the soft ground, panting, her body trembling from the exertion and the rush of power. The human knelt beside her, examining her closely. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've awakened. And with that, the balance is shifting. The factions will not stop, they will come again, stronger, faster. But now, you are ready." Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. Ready, for what? To challenge the system that has bound you, he said. To fight for freedom, not just yours, but for those who cannot escape. To change the galaxy. The weight of his words settled over her, mingling with the exhilaration of her new power. Lyra realized that escape was only the beginning. She had become a symbol of hope, a force capable of reshaping the future. Fear still lingered, but it was tempered by a fierce determination. She would not allow herself, or anyone else, to be controlled again. Night fell over the valley, painting the crystalline structures in silver and blue. Lyra's mind was alive with possibilities. With her power, the human's guidance, and her courage, she could confront the forces that had ruled her world for centuries. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time, she felt capable of facing it. As they rested, the human spoke again, softer this time. There's one more thing, he said. Knowledge, power, and freedom come at a cost. You must decide what you are willing to risk. Lyra looked at the glowing horizon, feeling the hum of the universe in her veins. I'm ready, she whispered, voice steady. I will risk everything if it means freedom, if it means a future where no one is bound like I once was. The human nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. Then we move forward. Together. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, the galaxy vast and mysterious. Shadows of danger lurked in distant corners, but Lyra no longer felt helpless. She had discovered her strength, her purpose, and her will. The rebellion had begun, and with it, the promise of revelation, justice, and a future forged by choice rather than chains. And so, in the hidden valley beyond Voria, two allies, alien and human, prepared to face the galaxy's challenges, aware that each step forward would test their courage, intelligence, and trust. But for the first time, Lyra knew she was not just surviving. She was fighting. And the galaxy would never see her the same way again. The hidden valley lay silent beneath the twin moons, but Lyra could feel tension humming in the air. Danger had not disappeared, it only waited in the shadows, patient and relentless. She stood beside the human, their hands brushing briefly, a quiet reminder of trust and shared purpose. Tonight would decide everything. The knowledge, the power, the risk, they all led to this moment. Beyond the valley lay a gateway, a relic of an ancient civilization, pulsating with energy that promised escape, or perhaps a fate even darker than Voria had ever imposed. The human studied the device, speaking softly but urgently. This gateway can take us far from here. But it must be activated correctly. One mistake, and we could be stranded, or worse. Are you ready? Lyra's pulse raced. She had faced fear before, battled enemies, and awakened powers she never knew she had. But this was the ultimate test. She nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. I'm ready. Let's do this. Together, they approached the gateway. It glowed with shifting colors, a mixture of light and shadow that seemed almost alive. Symbols etched along its surface pulsed in a rhythm that resonated with Lyra's very being. She reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing the energy field. A surge shot through her, sharp and electrifying, but not painful. She felt herself connected to the gateway, as if it recognized her power, her courage, her right to choose. The human activated the controls, his hands moving deftly over the alien interface. Lights blinked, energy pulses accelerated, and a low hum grew into a roar. Lyra gritted her teeth as waves of light washed over her, testing her focus, strength, and will. Behind them, the shadows of pursuing factions drew closer, their roars and shouts mingling with the humming of the gateway. There was no time to hesitate. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the gateway's light, a commander from Voria, a symbol of the oppressive society she had fled. His eyes blazed with fury. "You cannot escape, girl," he shouted. "The overseers will see justice done." Lyra's heart pounded, fear and anger clashing. But she did not falter. Raising her hand, she summoned the energy she had discovered in the plateau, a radiant force that pulsed outward like a shield. The commander staggered back, momentarily blinded by the power. She turned to the human. "Now, activate it." With a precise motion, the human pushed the final sequence, and the gateway responded. A vortex of light opened, swirling with infinite colors, a tunnel stretching beyond the known galaxy. Lyra felt the pull of the portal, the promise of freedom, but also the risk. One misstep, one lapse in focus, and everything could end here. The commander roared, summoning his guards, who surged forward with weapons raised. Lyra held her ground, using her power to block their advance, each pulse of energy pushing them back. Her muscles burned, her mind raced, but she felt a surge of exhilaration. This was what freedom demanded: courage, strength, and unyielding will. Finally, the pathway was clear. The human extended his hand. "Together," he said. Lyra took it without hesitation. They stepped into the vortex, light engulfing them completely. The sensation was disorienting. Time stretched and twisted, the stars streaked past them, and the ground of Voria vanished beneath a sea of colors and energy. Lyra felt herself both everywhere and nowhere, suspended between fear and awe. Then, suddenly, they landed on solid ground. The world around them was unfamiliar, vast, and alive with possibilities. The air was sweet and clean, the sky painted in hues she had never seen, and distant galaxies shimmered on the horizon. They had escaped Voria, but the galaxy was not safe, not yet. Lyra looked at the human, breathless, exhilarated, and free. "We made it," she whispered. "Yes," he replied, his eyes scanning the horizon. "But freedom is never guaranteed. Danger exists everywhere. We've only opened a new chapter." Lyra's gaze swept across the alien landscape. She felt a strange mixture of triumph and uncertainty. Everything she had known was behind her, her life in the city, the rules, the chains, but the future stretched out before her, endless and unpredictable. She realized that freedom was not just a destination, it was a choice, a responsibility, and a challenge she would face every day. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared on the horizon. Lyra squinted. It looked like another portal, or perhaps another group following them. The galaxy was full of unknowns, allies, and enemies alike. She tightened her grip on the human's hand, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly alive. She was no longer bound. She was no longer controlled. Every fear, every risk, every choice had led to this moment. She had stepped into the unknown, and she had survived. As the twin moons of this new world rose, casting silver light across the alien terrain, Lyra made a silent promise to herself. She would protect this freedom, fight for others who could not, and face the galaxy with courage and determination. The future was uncertain, full of shadows and dangers, but it was hers to shape. The human turned to her, smiling faintly. "Are you ready for the next step?" Lyra nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "Yes. Let's see what the galaxy has in store for us." And so, in the light of distant stars and twin moons, two fugitives, alien and human, stepped forward into the endless possibilities of the universe. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, Lyra knew the meaning of true freedom. And the galaxy would never see her the same way again.